I have a phone number that teens can call or text after they've been through any part of my curriculum if they are grappling with a decision, a choice that might look like it's going to end in regret or guilt or shame rather than joy and honor, because that's what it's all about. And I can tell you with real certainty that right now young people are hungry, starving for leadership that holds some clout in their eyes that rewards them for acts of humanity and the thought process that might lead up to that. I want to focus on one particular group that's hungry. In over 22 years of advocating for youth and teaching youth, one consistent demographic reaches out the most, and that is boys ages 14 through 21. Now, when I say that, how many people are surprised? So when I tell people that, sometimes I get a lot of surprise, because this is stereotypically the same group that says, I don't know, 5 sentences on a good day, right? As far as communication skills. But stereotype aside, it's true. And what does it really mean? I mean, what does it mean that after 20 years of the changing landscape of what it means to be a teenager these days, why is that one of the few constant facts in my line of work? Well, it means that our boys need us. It means that they're in crisis. And our current social and political culture, and through our lack of adequate response, our educational culture, is perpetuating that crisis. What do we need to do? We need to radically love our boys with intention. And when I say that, a lot of people say to me, the adult population, says, that's a really oversimplified response to a very complicated issue. And my response to them is, no, it's not. No, it isn't. That's what adults often say when teenagers bring up a really important and challenging issue. What I say in my classroom a lot is, this isn't complicated, it's just really hard. Not complicated, just really hard. And so, our boys need us. Let's man up. Let's show up, do the work. What do they need? They need our love. And what might that look like? So here are 5 examples of ways I think our boys need us that are simple, not easy, but simple. And I just want to talk about those 5. And these have come specifically from just empirical data from texts, conversations, emails that I've gotten from boys simply in the last 12 months. So, first of all, they need space. What if we created a space where both literally and figuratively our boys could actually practice being the men that we hope they'll become, rather than our passively sitting back and watching them become the men that we're afraid they're going to become? It's not just on our boys to grow up right. It's our job to turn them into men. It's our job to turn them into men. They need space and they need permission from someone they care about and respect to be that person. I get so many boys throughout the years as they're leaving my classroom, some of them in tears, saying, okay, I totally get this. This makes so much sense when we're inside these 4 walls. I get it. I buy it. Empathy is power. Right. If I can name what's going on the inside, my outside will get easier. And I understand if I can stop and count to 3 and do the right thing in this moment, it will serve me in the long run. But Charis, where am I supposed to be that person? You think I'm going to get a standing ovation with my friends in the locker room? Where can I be that person and be rewarded for it? And it's such a great question, because there are so few spaces right now for our boys to question, much less cry, or call each other out on behavior that clearly is not serving our culture. Just places where they can stop and reflect, revise, redraft the versions of themselves that they're trying to become. And the spaces that do exist out there do not often reward them for it. They shame, they intimidate, they silence. And what happens to our boys is they end up being pushed into behavior that doesn't serve themselves or others. So, What our boys need is that they need places and spaces that reward them for showing up and just doing the things that we simply are asking them to do. So my point is, if we don't provide those spaces, then we can only blame ourselves when they try to create those spaces for themselves. Clumsily at best and dangerously at worst. How about this? What if we just reflected how they were doing? I know I would like that personally. Compassionately though. So these are direct examples. So I get a text a while back, and I don't even know who it's from. I see the area code, but a lot of them are anonymous. And it's I get a text that says, Charis, it's 2:00 in the morning. I'm at a frat party. I just saw myself through your eyes. I'm sorry, and I love you. Good night. So I don't even want to know what was happening. I thank him for not giving me any more details. And so I think that's not a real heroic moment. But yeah, it is. I mean, isn't that amazing? We've got a kid, I'm sure sober, who's taking a moment to just be accountable to himself. He's just watching himself. He's witnessing his behavior, and he's naming it to someone. And he's doing it because he's not afraid of being ashamed. In fact, he's excited and proud that he has someone to name it to, because he knows that person is unquestionably on his side, and that person only wants honor and joy for him. Another mirror, a 15-year-old who came up to me a few months back and said, in the 15-year-old awesome boy way, Charis, I'm just wondering if we could have some lunch and we could talk about, I've been tabulating some facts that have been happening in my life, been keeping track of them, and I'm wondering if we could just sit down and go over those facts. We could just, check in about that. And I was like, sure. So is there a goal in this conversation? Is it sort of a free-for-all? And he's like, oh, no, yeah. I'm just wondering if you could tell me if I'm lonely or sad. Because just look at the fact, you could just, reflect together. So without a mirror, so often our boys don't even know what they feel. So how can we ask more? How about when they show up? Maybe not a standing ovation, but could we just recognize the good rather than shame the bad? And let's use affirmative consent just as one example, which is exciting because our country's now talking about sexual affirmative consent, hopefully for longer than 45 minutes this time. So I had this awesome Thanksgiving phone call, which was so great. It was like those gratitude phone calls you make sometimes at Thanksgiving, and this was from a boy who I went to his school probably 4 times a year throughout his four years of high school, talking about some of this stuff, wide range. But and this kid was like not your cerebral sort of note-taking, reflective kind of student. He was more of an experiential learner in the moment, and he was awesome. But that just made this phone call even more special to me. So, I'm surrounded by turkey dinner, and I get this phone call, and he's like, Charis, I just wanted to thank you because I just had what I would consider my first full-on hookup of my college career. And meanwhile, he's calling an over 50-year-old to tell me how great is that? And he's like, so I just had this experience, and I just have to tell you that 20 minutes into it, she stops me, and she says, can I just tell you, you're the first guy that has ever checked in with me during anything like this. And first of all, let's keep going. Yes, and 2, I want your phone number. I'm going to be calling you. And after that, it was so great. And this kid was like, consent, what? Who knew? Totally works. And so we were able then, to meet each other where we lived. And I was able to say to him, and you're going to be getting a lot of action in the next 4 years. And following that, a really powerful and beautiful conversation about sexual reciprocity and terms like intimate justice. And how about a new working definition of power and masculinity? I mean, I'm sure we're all pretty hungry for that these days, but especially our boys. I had a 17-year-old boy come to me, and he was in a real dilemma. He was an incredible, academically achieving student, star athlete, very popular, considered very experienced, and he really wanted to ask this girl to the prom, but confided in me that he hadn't kissed a girl yet. And so his dilemma was, do I go to the prom and possibly out myself of not really knowing what I'm doing and get made fun of, or not go to the prom at all and miss this opportunity? And so he'd come to me because he had, being the overachieving academic, he had tried to do a little research on his own. At first, he tried to download a PDF, with instructions. And that had turned out to be a little dry and not super informative. He brought it with him so we could look it over together. Totally concur. And then he had come to me specifically because he had gone to the internet, which never ends well. I'm not saying that this boy hadn't seen pornography before. I mean, in this country, boys over 14, most of them have. But in this situation, he welled up with tears because he was so eager to honor this person and this experience, just like he'd honored every other new experience in his life. Why would this be any different? And he said to me, so I now know how to penetrate orifices that I have never considered with objects I didn't know existed, but I can't find examples of what does it look like for a man to kiss a woman with reverence, but a lot of passion. I don't know what that looks like. And I think that both of our hearts broke a little bit in that moment. And, that's another talk about porn, the pros and cons, but there's no judgment there at this point. But as a youth advocate, when did pornography climb to the top of the list as examples of passionate connection? The last is just a one-sentence text that I got from a teen fairly recently that, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm at the grocery store, and I just look down at my phone, and there's one sentence that just says, "Will you tell me again why you love me?" And I get texts like that every week from boys. How do we create lasting social change? Again, not complicated, just hard. I'm saying all we do is that we simply change how we influence, teach, and connect with young men in the ways that they behave, ways that will serve themselves and others, that are not complicated, just hard. Because, and this is important, if we do that, the humanity will come from the hungry place inside of them. And it will make sense to them, and it will stay making sense to them because they will feel honor and joy rather than regret, guilt, or shame. So what if we just created this space? We diligently created space. We held up the mirror for them in a loving way, and we handed them maybe a different definition of connection and masculinity that didn't look like the current cultural norm. And we stuck with it for them. And what if we said, hey, if you step into this space, we will listen and we will marvel, and we will be able to tell you how powerful it is, how incredibly powerful it is when you show up like this. Not complicated. And so what would it look like if we created the space and we just got out of the way?